warm welcome to all you wonderful subscribers. This is Red Eyes Creations Radio, our subscriber interview, and we are talking with Lynn Marzulli, the author of the Nephilim trilogy, and his latest book is called Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural. What I want to begin is to talk about something that you mentioned in the first hour, Lynn. You said that Lucifer is kind of a super scientist, basically. And I find this comment interesting because when you earlier talked about the apparitions at Fatima, my mind is drawn towards something called Project Bluebeam. We know that the military, with the use of holographic projection, can make an enemy see an approaching army or squadron platoon at a faraway distance. Could it be that the apparitions at Fatima, although this was back in 1912, that this actually was a kind of mass hallucinogenic, an EMF-induced vision, advanced psychotronic weapons? Any ideas about this at all?
Yeah, I would sort of concur. I believe that whatever the kids saw was not the Mary of the Bible, and how it was probably manipulated was some sort of a holographic image that they saw. Remember, the being was very, very stone-like, very rigid-like, never moved its mouth, communicated with them telepathically, held some sort of a metallic ball in her hand. The dress was all wrong for the period, having a short skirt, which, all that was later doctored up and glossed over, to make it seem like a miracle. And I mean, that's why I take great umbrage in that, because I feel like the people that were in positions of responsibility really let their guard down and didn't really thoroughly investigate this. Interestingly enough, in one of the books in the research, it's called Celestial Lights by D. Armada, and one of the things he talks about was that in the late 1990s, they actually uncovered a fourth witness.
Mm-hmm.
And this is bizarre because this little girl at the time was in the same area of Cova de Ira, which is the Cova of Irene, which is in Fatima, which is actually the spot in Fatima where they saw the apparition. And, people have been seeing things and hearing about things. In other words, with these three kids, they weren't just the only people who were experiencing. Other people were seeing things and experiencing things. Well, it's like decades later, and this woman comes forward, and she just, other people knew about her story. The deal was that she was never one of the major visionaries, because when she was by the same tree, exactly the same tree, at the Ever Three Fears saw the initial apparition. And what she saw was a blonde-haired boy, appeared to be a boy, but she couldn't really tell, some sort of a blonde-haired child playing there,
mm-hmm.
who communicated with her telepathically, telling her to come over and kneel and say 3 Hail Marys. So, I mean, if that's true, it's completely bizarre, because no one in Portugal is blonde-haired. I mean, not in 1917.
Mm.
It's just, especially in Fatima, Portugal, it's just not happening. A little 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, and the child had long blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
So whether this was an abductee or, I don't know what she was looking at, but she didn't go over. And, the reason why she went on the record so much later is because she saw something which doesn't jibe with what the Catholic Church dogma has talked about. And of course, whether or not she's been interviewed by the Catholic Church, I have no idea. But I just found that interesting. But getting back on point with the psychotronic weapons and
mm-hmm.
what the military has or may not have, I honestly believe that when the UFOs manifest, it will not be holographics. We won't be looking at a hologram in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
What we'll be looking at is a real deal. And some of this it goes back into just a few months ago over the English Channel, kind of in your neck of the woods. There was a mile-wide UFO sighted by 2 pilots. One was a British airline pilot, I believe. The other one was just a private pilot. They both saw the same thing. They saw this what they estimated to be a mile-wide craft
mm-hmm.
over the English Channel. And that's huge.
It is.
Imagine waking up, and I write about this in Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, that one of the scenarios I paint is after this Gog-Magog war, the War of Ezekiel 38 and 39, which I believe triggers the supernatural. What if people wake up and over L.A. and New York and Denver and and Oslo and just in London and, just places all around Paris, all around the globe. They're like, Mile Wide Craft is sitting there. Guess what? All bets are off. And the reason why I believe that they're waiting for an event like this is because when the world sees Israel use its neutron bombs against this horde of invaders which come up against a land of unwalled villages, the world's going to be stunned. It's not like Hiroshima or Nagasaki. That was like, we can argue this all day, whether it was just or unjust using the bomb. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is it still took 2 bombs before the Japanese surrendered. All you have to do is go to and look at what happened in Iwo Jima to realize that there's no way these guys are going to surrender. They'll go down to the last man. Mm. So, we had to drop, and that's just the way their culture is, again, based on supernatural events and their worldview and what they believe, the whole code of Bushido and all that. They would have gone down to the last man, period, to the last man. So that's why it took 2 atomic bombs. And we look at that, and in some ways we justify it as like, okay, the Allies, the Brits, all of Europe who was fighting against this evil access, and it was evil access. Just if there's any doubt of that, just look at what they did in the Japanese concentration camps, or look at the rape of Nanking, and just Google that and check, watch some of what comes up there. It's unbelievable atrocity. So, there are times when you have to draw your sword, unfortunately, and stand for what is freedom and truth and hopefully goodness, and you're fighting against evil. But to get back on point, the world looked at this thing and they kind of didn't blink. It was like, okay, this is a good thing. We're wiping these guys out, and it's going to end the war early, and of course it did. But what if something like the neutron bomb, and it's more than one? There's also a prophecy, interestingly enough, that's and this is something that should blow the minds of your listeners. I'm not making this stuff up. You just got to know where to look. But in Isaiah 17, it says specifically that Damascus, the city of Damascus, which is the capital of Syria, will cease to be a city, will become no more. And what people have to realize is Damascus is the oldest inhabited city on the planet. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the place. It's Damascus, and that most historians and would certainly agree with that. So you've got this prophecy of Isaiah saying that Damascus ceases to be a city, and of course we know that that's never happened. So fast forward to Israel about 2 months ago doing this surprise strike, and by the way, just today, Assad, the president of Syria, Ba'ath Party, by the way, which is a whole 3-hour sidebar, how the Ba'ath Party was established, and the Mufti of Jerusalem, and the remnants of the Third Reich fleeing to the Middle East, and on it goes. And I won't get there. That's a whole topic for another time. But I believe the roots of Nazism took place and just moved from Germany down into the Middle East, and that's in the form of the Ba'ath Party, which is why you have the virulent anti-Semitism that you have. But getting back on point, Assad agreed this morning, and admitted, I should say, that yes, the strike by the Israelis was on a cache of nuclear material that was going to be used for a nuclear program in Syria. So that came out. Now, here's something that the Israelis said about 3 weeks ago. And you have to realize what you're looking at. And you have to first of all know the prophecy before you can even begin to look, as to what might be setting the stage for the fulfillment of that prophecy. Mm-hmm. That's why in the first hour we talked about Iran and the whole Gog, Magog, Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy, and how that the stage is being set for that, and it's in my opinion, definitely being set for that, and it's just a matter of when. That will trigger, I believe, also the ruin or the complete annihilation of Damascus. Why do I say that? Israel, about 2 weeks ago, did some massive saber rattling back in Syria's face. They said, and I'm quoting pretty much verbatim, but I'm paraphrasing here too, that if you use chemical weapons against us, we will annihilate you. If you use, in other words, if Syria uses chemical weapons against the Israelis will annihilate the Syrians. They're not screwing around here. In other words, you guys want to pull this? You come in and try to invade our country, and you use chemical weapons. You can kiss Damascus goodbye. That's how that reads. Again, do I want to see this stuff happen? No, I don't. What I find fascinating is man has free will. Okay? And the great God of the universe, who knows the beginning from the end and the end from the beginning, has written this down for everyone on the planet to look at. I'm not the only guy who's looking at this stuff. There's other people. Yep. Most people don't, because they think that these ancient manuscripts are dry and boring and dull, and there's certain passages which may appear that at first, but with a little further scrutiny and some due diligence upon the student, prophecy becomes very, very much alive and very much very poignant in today's culture and in today's ongoing news. I mean, we see it, in my opinion, the stage being set or even prophecy being fulfilled in our lifetime. So when I see something like the Israelis saber-rattling, getting back in the Syrians' faces and saying, look, you use chemical weapons against us, we'll annihilate you, once again, that figures, it's a double-edged thing, or in other words, it's a dual fulfillment. It's not really a fulfillment, but it's setting the stage, I should say, for a dual fulfillment. One, Isaiah 17, the other one, Ezekiel 38 and 39. Both of these things, I believe, will happen simultaneously. There are other people who delve into prophecy that have slightly different views. They believe that the destruction of Damascus is not in conjunction with the Ezekiel 38 war, and they're entitled to their opinion, just like I'm entitled to mine. I'm not saying I have all the answers, and I try to keep a light touch on this stuff. You know, it's like, this is how I think it's going to come down. Here are some scenarios, guys. That's all I'm saying. Here's some scenarios that I think bear closer scrutiny on our part.
Well, that's again, it's very interesting to view it that way, and there is, I mean, no matter how we look at this, the thing that is going on in the Middle East, I mean, could this ever be solved in another way than violence? I mean, it's fighting, as you say, all the time. There's news constantly about this region, and it's to some extent what I see from kind of a more outside view, I guess, on this issue is that I also see that many people are, how should I put it, very interested in actually seeing something more violently taking place in the region because of the connections with the prophecy and what the prophecies say about the time after this upheaval. Do you see that as a kind of a dangerous thing, or do you see that?
Well, that would be very dangerous, and of course, anyone who manipulates that to try to happen would be, in my opinion, incredibly diabolical. I mean, the bottom line is you're not going to get the nations that are listed, in the prophecy. Specifically, the first one is I believe what would be called Russia, today's modern day, state of Russia.
And that is like Magog or Gog?
Magog.
Magog.
Magog would be the former Soviet Union, i.e. Russia. But the second one listed is Iran, formerly known as Persia. Now, it was called Persia for literally thousands of years. Fairly recently, they changed it to Iran. Iran is an Islamic fundamentalist state. That's what it is. Now, I'm not going to change their opinion. I'm not going to change Ahmadinejad's worldview. I mean, I'm just not. He has a worldview, and that worldview hinges in his own eschatology with the manifestation of what they call the Imam Mahdi, who they're waiting for. And so it's like, once again, his whole worldview is being shaped by supernatural events that happened millennia ago, which is the quote I constantly bring the reader back to in my book. And that's what we're looking at. The machinations of Iran are based on Islamic fundamentalism. So it's like, with all due respect, the West has certainly we can't manipulate them into a war. They want to attack Israel. I mean, if you, without doing anything, all you have to do is Google quotes by Ahmadinejad and watch what comes up. I mean, I use some of those quotes and refer to some of those quotes in my book, Politics, Prophecy, the Supernatural. And one of the ones is, Israel is a dry tree soon to be plucked up by its roots. Israel will soon be no more. Israel will be wiped off the map, and on and on and on. I mean, constantly, the Holocaust didn't really happen. And the vitriol against Israel is unprecedented. And we all know that Putin is no great fan of Israel either. And, Putin and the Iranians are definitely in bed together. The Iranians are buying many of their weapons from Russia. And this whole thing, again, when it talks about Magog, the hook in the jaw